Good evening, everyone. My name is Kamal Johnson. I'm the mayor of the city of Hudson. I want to welcome you all to tonight's State of the Community event. I want to thank all of our viewers watching on YouTube and on social media. Last year, this time, I wrote an open letter to the city of Hudson, kind of detailing all the work that was being done and all the progress that we had over, the first 100 days. So this year, I wanted to do something a little different. I wanted to gather all of our higher elected officials and our leaders in the community in one spot and kind of have them speak directly to the city of Hudson and to Columbia County. I feel that it's rare to get everyone speaking directly to the constituents. I invited them to give an update on what they're working on and how it directly impacts us as a city and a county. Our first speaker tonight had a last minute schedule change, but was able to send in a video of her speech. I've had the great pleasure to have many conversations with her, especially during the financial crisis caused by COVID-19. And she told me over and over, don't panic. We're going to make sure that the city of Hudson gets federal aid, and we're going to make sure that everything is okay. So I was happy to be able to hear that from some of our higher elected officials and be able to work side by side with them. And they were able to accomplish that along with some of the other speakers that are on the line tonight. So without further ado, I would like to welcome the United States Senator from New York, Kirsten Gillibrand.
Hi, it's Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. I want to thank Mayor Kamal Johnson for inviting me to be part of the City of Hudson's State of the Community. The past year has been extremely challenging as the pandemic has hit the most vulnerable populations the hardest. In Washington, I've been fighting hard to deliver the critical resources American families and small businesses urgently need. With the latest $1.9 trillion stimulus package, the American Rescue Plan, we've created the most significant poverty-reducing legislation in modern history. It's going to get real help to families across New York in so many ways, including $1,400 relief checks, a child tax credit expansion that will benefit 87% of New York children and cut child poverty in half over the next year, and more support for nutrition programs, unemployment, and emergency rental assistance. We also successfully negotiated the inclusion of funding for public health, economic recovery, and essential services that will go directly into your community. I'm particularly proud that the American Rescue Plan includes nearly $8 billion for the health force, my legislation to establish a new public health workforce that would create community-based public health jobs to aid the country's vaccine distribution campaign. It also includes more than $28 billion for a restaurant revitalization fund to address the financial hardship faced by the restaurant industry after I called for the inclusion of the Restaurants Act during my visit to Hudson last fall. Additionally, live venues that have been forced to close their doors will now be able to access funds through the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant Program, and the PPP program will receive another $7 billion boost to keep our small businesses afloat. Last but not least, Congressman Delgado and I fought hard for the inclusion of over $300 billion in direct relief for state and local governments that have been on the front lines of this pandemic since the beginning. There is still so much more work to be done to help our community fully recover, and I will keep fighting in Washington to raise your voices and get every upstate community the resources you need to thrive. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you, Senator Gillibrand, for all your hard work. I know that federal relief was something that was extremely important for our municipality and all the surrounding ones. That was probably, our biggest fear going into this year was, will we have the resources to continue going forward? So thank you to all of those who worked hard to make sure that that happens. I also want to turn the mic over to our next speaker, Senator Daphne Jordan, who is going to fill us in on the work that she's been able to do in our community and what's to come next for 2021.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you, Mayor Johnson, for tonight's invitation. I'm honored to take part in this special community conversation and provide an update on some of the latest news regarding your state government. Conversations like this are important. I'm proud to serve you in the New York State Senate. The 43rd Senate District represents all of Columbia County, where the city of Hudson is so important. I want to share some of the latest news, policies, and programs that affect the community and your quality of life. I want to be sure and share my contact information with you also. I think probably the most important two things you can write down are my district phone number, which is 518-371-2751, or my email, which is Jordan, Jordan, @nysenate.gov. If you ever need assistance, if I can help you or your family, please be sure to contact me. Right now, we're just 14 days away from the 21-22 state budget being due by the state's April 1st fiscal deadline. Passing a timely, responsible state budget is one of the most important jobs for state legislators. Budget conference committees are meeting this week, and that's where the assembly members and senators continue the important work of moving the state budget through both houses of the state legislature. In the Senate and Assembly, we both advanced our respective one House budget resolutions this week. These resolutions are a statement and reflection of each House's policy priorities. Vaccines. Getting the COVID-19 vaccine distribution process fixed and working efficiently and effectively has been a top priority for me. The vaccines are so vitally important to finally putting this deadly pandemic behind us and getting our country, state, community, and our lives back to normal. I've been vocal that politics must remain out of the vaccine distribution and that the state needs to be a true partner with local governments to speed up the distribution process and make sure counties, cities, and towns have access to enough vaccines so as many people, especially senior citizens, people with chronic health conditions, and compromised immune systems can be vaccinated safely, quickly, and effectively. I was genuinely disturbed that the governor's so-called vaccine czar was reportedly recently calling county leaders on the issue of vaccines and possibly gauging political support for the governor in light of the sexual harassment allegations lodged against him. The effort to gauge support for the governor politicized the vaccine process. Both Democrats and Republicans agreed that it's simply unacceptable, and I wrote Senators Schumer and Gillibrand asking that they intervene and ensure such political nonsense stops. I'm also glad that President Biden's administration weighed in and said such outreach from the governor's vaccine point person was inappropriate, and I credit them for saying so. The COVID-19 vaccines are literally a matter of life and death, and I won't accept any effort to put politics into this equation. Whichever vaccine you can get, I encourage everyone to do so to help protect you and your loved ones from COVID-19 so we can all get back to normal as soon as feasible. Lyme disease. Lyme disease and tick-borne illness is a major issue here in Columbia County. In fact, Columbia County has been often characterized as ground zero in the fight against Lyme disease due to its prevalence in the community. The fight against Lyme disease and tick-borne illnesses can't be relegated to a second-tier issue, even in the time of COVID-19. Lyme disease and tick-borne illnesses are a public health crisis and one that must command our time, attention, and resources. It's incredibly painful, deadly, and debilitating, and negatively impacting personal health and causing chronic issues. The CDC has reported that nearly 500,000 individuals, likely many, many more because it often goes unreported, are diagnosed and treated for Lyme annually. Funding for Lyme disease prevention must remain a priority. Sadly, Governor Cuomo's executive budget proposal contained no new funding and eliminated the minimal $69,400 allocated annually to the State Department of Health for this issue. I'm pleased that we were able to restore the $69,400 in Lyme tick disease funding in our Senate One House budget. My Senate colleagues and I also called for at least 1.5 million to be included in this year's state budget to fund research, prevention, and education to help combat the spread of Lyme and tick-borne diseases. And we hope that will be realized in the final state budget, although it's a steep climb. I also wanted to talk to you about the Dwyer program. This program was created through 2012 and 13 in the state budget. The Joseph P. Dwyer Veterans Peer-to-Peer Support Program is a groundbreaking initiative operating in 23 counties that helps veterans dealing with the invisible wounds of war, including post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injury, and depression. This proven positive program empowers veterans to meet with other veterans in a safe, secure, and comfortable atmosphere so they may help one another by providing life-saving counseling services and support. Military veterans are much more likely to confer in and trust their peers who have endured similar experiences, which is why the Dwyer program is so effective in providing services and support for veterans. Governor Cuomo's 21-22 executive budget proposal did not include any funding for the Dwyer program, meaning that the state legislature once again needed to restore funding for this important initiative. Last year, I was successful in helping to ensure that the 2021 state budget provided approximately $4.5 million for the Dwyer program. Columbia County's Dwyer program is administered by my good friend and distinguished decorated combat veteran, Gary Flaherty, who is the Director of Veterans Services for Columbia County. Since 2019, I've advocated for the Dwyer program, successfully securing $100,000 for Columbia County, $145,000 for Rensselaer County, and $185,000 for Saratoga County, respectively, as part of the 2019-20 state budget and the 2021 state budget. The Joseph P. Dwyer Peer-to-Peer Support Program has proven incredibly effective at helping our military veterans and delivering the essential counseling services so important for our heroes dealing with PTSD, TBI, and depression. I've been saying for the past few months that the budget this year must prioritize Dwyer program funding and that the state legislature should work in a bipartisan fashion to make these funding restorations a reality within this year's state budget. I'm pleased to report that the Senate included $4.5 million for the Dwyer program in our One House budget resolution, and the Assembly, which I'm sure Dee Dee will mention, included an additional $1.5 million for a total of $6 million. While a deal in Albany is never a deal until it's done, the fact that the Dwyer program funding is included in both the Senate and Assembly's One House budgets bodes well for its inclusion in the final state budget. I've also been working on a plan that we call our Reset New York plan. In addition to working on the state budget, my colleagues have worked very hard in advancing our Reset New York plan. Our forward-looking agenda is focused on restarting our economy, rethinking how state government serves the people, and renewing our commitment to communities and each other. To restart our local economies, our priorities must be safely reopening our small businesses so they can get back on their feet and residents can seek and obtain gainful employment. We need to help our schools and colleges stay open so our children can continue to receive the resources they need to grow into healthy, happy adults. We must invest in our physical and human infrastructure to rebuild our state's competitiveness, especially workforce development, childcare, and broadband for unserved and underserved communities. In terms of rethinking how New York State government operates, our priorities must begin with ending our state's unaffordability problem, which has been further magnified by the coronavirus pandemic and has led to the exodus of residents from our state. Also, taking on state government's culture of overspending amid a multi-year budget crisis, just as struggling families, business owners, and local governments have had to rethink their finances, as our state's economy has worsened year after year. Additionally, we must reassert the state legislature's constitutional authority as a co-equal branch of government with the executive, and it must happen to ensure that we no longer have one-man rule. The bill that recently passed has not really changed anything. To renew our commitment to our residents, we have to prioritize the growth of vibrant local communities where people want to live. We also need to develop a robust, diverse economy that incorporates opportunities in manufacturing, production, and service industries. In addition, our focus should be creating safer neighborhoods in terms of both public health and crime by ensuring smart, equitable distributions of health resources and reaffirming our state's commitment to common sense public safety measures. The goal of my Reset New York plan is to help forge a better path forward for each and every New Yorker. I have a slew of bills that I was set to talk about that refer to all I've just stated in my Reset New York plan, but I would run over my 10 minutes. So I think I will skip over them, but I do want to highlight broadband because that is very necessary to everybody and for resetting New York. The lack of access to broadband is a major issue for communities like Columbia County. The lack of high-speed internet limits the ability to attract new businesses and for existing businesses to expand. In the time of COVID-19, this problem is vastly exacerbated as people have to work from home and children have to distance learn. In 2019, the new Senate majority made further broadband expansion more challenging by approving an executive initiative that authorized DOT to charge a fee on fiber optic utilities for the use and occupancy of the right-of-way of New York state highways. The governor had previously proposed this fee in 2018, but the Senate Republican majority ensured that it was not included in the enacted budget. This fee exempts any fiber optic utility that received a state grant award through the New York broadband program, but provides a significant disincentive for any other utility to expand and run fiber optic cable in the state. According to the Division of Budget, the total cost of this fee was $15 million in fiscal year 2020, $30 million in fiscal year 2021, and will be $50 million annually in fiscal year 2022 and thereafter. The legislature can repeal this fee by passing Senate Bill 2659, and that's very important. I feel that we also need to address New York's middle skills gap on a regional basis with our community colleges. According to a 2017 report of the New York Association of Training and Employment Professionals, middle skill jobs represent a significant share of the New York labor market, as more than 45% of jobs are projected to be middle skill between 2014 and 2024. While middle skill jobs account for half of the labor market, only 38% of the state's workforce is trained at the middle skill level. This mismatch between the needs of employers and the skills possessed by the available workforce is called the skills gap, and we should address this gap with one of our state's greatest resources, our excellent community college system. New York has great community colleges like Columbia Green Community Colleges that are ready, willing, and able to partner with local businesses to give individuals the skills needed to be hired into good paying jobs that will allow those individuals and their families to live a comfortable middle class life. At the same time, by ensuring that businesses have access to a skilled workforce, they will be able to thrive and grow. And these are just some of the many issues, legislation and policy priorities I'm working on to help improve your quality of life. And it's my honor serving as your state senator. And please contact me if I can be of any assistance to you or your loved ones. Thank you.
And thank you, State Senator Jordan. When I planned this event, I wanted to make sure that it was something that was we were going to reach across party lines to all of our representatives who are helping to lead the people in our district. Next, I would like to pass it off to someone who needs no introduction, someone who I'm proud to have watched work very hard for our community and our district. So I will turn the mic over to our Congressman, Antonio Delgado.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. I appreciate the kind words. It's good to be with all of you, even if it has to be virtually. I am in DC and doing my best to make sure that I represent your interest, every single one of you, irrespective of party affiliation. Good to be with all of the elected officials on this call, all of the public servants, no matter what side of the aisle you're on. The emphasis should be on service when it comes to this work. I want to just start by really highlighting what I think is an historic piece of legislation that we were able to get done last week, the American Rescue Plan. $1.9 trillion that's going to go in the pockets of struggling families, working families, our farmers, our small business owners, our restaurants, our venue operators, you name it. This package is significant and it's timely. We've had to endure this pandemic now for over a year, and it's imperative that we meet the moment, that we put real, meaningful, robust support on the ground. And I have to say, on a personal note, I'm very proud of being able to really lead the charge when it comes to local government funding. When you think back to the CARES Act in March of last year, there was state and local funding in that legislation. However, none of that funding went to any government entity serving a population less than 500,000 people. Think about that. If you look at our district, New York 19, you can find no government entity serving a population greater than 500,000. So that means all of our local governments, our counties, our towns, our cities, our villages, all of them were left out in the cold, dating back to March. And what does that mean? We're talking about funding for essential services, whether it's our firefighters, whether it's our teachers, law enforcement, whether it's making sure that we're addressing mental health, substance abuse prevention, domestic violence, housing prevention. All of these pieces, we are relying on local government officials on the ground in partnerships with small business owners and nonprofits to do this work. Instead, we've had to have layoffs across the district. And I know how that's felt for so many folks. And so being able to secure this relief has been instrumental. My direct support for Communities Act, I introduced in May of last year, in May. And we were able to get it included in the HEROES Act, but of course it stalled in the Senate. We tried to get it in HEROES 2, and we did, but it stalled in the Senate. We hoped to get state and local funding in the December package, but we did not. That was very frustrating. But we ultimately got it included in the American Rescue Plan. We're talking about $130.2 billion going to local governments across the United States. And when we're talking about New York 19, we're talking about over $400 million going directly to local governments in New York 19. Over $400 million. And this funding can be used not just to replace the loss of revenue or to deal with the costs incurred to fight the pandemic. It can be used to address all the negative economic impacts brought about by COVID-19. And if our local elected officials, our public servants on the ground think the best way to do that is to invest in infrastructure, to invest in broadband, to invest in wastewater management systems, to invest in nonprofits, to invest in our small businesses, there's latitude, there's flexibility to do just that. And I want to be clear. I've spoken to elected officials across the political spectrum, whether they're Democrat or Republican, and no one's telling me we don't need relief. That's a myth that's being spewed here in Washington by people who are extremely partisan and doing so unnecessarily. The vast majority of Americans across the political spectrum support this bill, and no doubt the folks on the ground, New York 19, that I've talked to on the issue of local government funding certainly appreciate this. And so to be in a position to try to lead, in this situation is critically important. I want to note, The funding will also be able to go towards vaccination, which separate and apart from direct funding, there's money in the rescue plan that will help with distribution, that will help with pop-up sites, that will help with supplies. And we know how important that is. I was actually meeting with the chairman of the Columbia Board of Supervisors not long ago, Matt Morrell. We had a real conversation about the need for relief in this regard and how it'll help with the vaccination and the rollout there. So really, really excited about what we can do with this. I do want to flag specific numbers as they pertain to Columbia County and Hudson. Columbia County will receive $11.5 million in direct federal government relief. 11.5 million. The city of Hudson will receive nearly $670,000 in direct federal funding relief. So this is real money going to our localities, and again, to help our families, to help our small business owners, to help our farmers. So very, very excited about what can come of this. It's not just rescuing our communities, as the title of the legislation suggests, it's also how we sustain them, moving forward. And this is the kind of legislation that can get that done. I want to also focus on some other areas of the American Rescue Plan that I think you all are familiar with. Obviously, there are the direct stimulus checks that have already been sent out. Starting on March 12th, Americans began receiving stimulus checks. Last night, I held a town hall with reps from the IRS who answered questions about stimulus checks and the timing of them, how to access them. If you have any questions about that, please reach out to the office, my office, 518-276-4123, 518-276-4123. Also, unemployment is a big part of the rescue plan. Under this plan, uninsurance payments will be at $300 a week, and the benefits extend to September 6th through September 6th. And notably, very important, your first $10,200 of unemployment benefits are non-taxable for households with incomes making under $150,000. So if you are in a household that is making under $150,000 and you have $10,200 in unemployment payments, that first $10,200 is non-taxable. Very, very important. And it's something that I want to make sure people were aware of. Child tax credits, also a part of the American Rescue Plan. It is projected to reduce the number of children living in poverty by more than 40%. By more than 40%. The plan temporarily expands the child tax credit, increasing the amount to $3,000 for children ages 6 to 17 and $3,600 for children under the age of 6. Another big development within the American Rescue Plan. COVID vaccination, we're making some progress. Over 4.5 million New Yorkers have received their first COVID vaccine. 2.3 million folks have been completely vaccinated. Like I've mentioned, a lot of money right now is going towards dramatically ramping up vaccinations across the United States, which we know is required to end this pandemic. The rescue plan provides $7.5 billion to track, administer, and distribute COVID-19 vaccines. Critically important. For our students, our teachers, the folks on the front lines doing the critical work of educating our future, the rescue plan delivers $128 billion in grants to state educational agencies, with 90% of those funds going to local educational agencies. 90%. Additionally, $39 billion will be delivered to higher education institutions. $15 billion in funds are directed to the Child Care and Development Block Grant Program to support child care facilities. We know how important it is to support our child care providers and facilities. I want to flag for you, the Hudson City School District will receive over $3.8 million coming out of the rescue plan. For our small business owners, we increased the amount of money in the Paycheck Protection Program, $7.25 billion in new money. And we also allow folks to have a second bite at the apple, those who have been hardest hit. This includes our farmers as well, for our restaurants who line the streets of our main streets, right? And who are enabling us to continue to socialize socially distanced, right? Is critically important. With the weather changing, we want to make sure we can kickstart these businesses, drive foot traffic to our main streets, and make sure we support our retail shops and stores. This is how we can do it. $25 billion of a new grant program designed to stabilize our restaurants in New York 19 and across the country. We also have our venue operators grant program, the shuttered venue operators. We have so many museums, so many live venues, so many opportunities all throughout New York 19 and in Columbia County, where we try to bring people together to host live shows and take on theater, whatever the case might be. And we can't, because the business model of bringing people together has been totally upended by COVID-19. Well, the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant Program would support those venue operators. And I'm fighting to make sure that those funds don't just support the venue operators, but the small businesses that service those operators, like our photographers, our caterers, our DJs, the folks who are relying on these businesses to function themselves. Additional legislation, separate and apart from the American Rescue Plan. I can go on and on about my focus. Obviously, as you all know, if you've been tracking my movements, broadband is going to be a focus of mine. It has been, it will continue to be a focus of mine. Infrastructure will certainly be a focus of mine. Making sure we bring green jobs to our communities will be a focus of mine. But in the more recent history, I was proud to support gun legislation to prevent gun violence and strengthen background checks and close dangerous loopholes most recently, while protecting our Second Amendment rights of law-abiding gun owners. Also want to flag that I was proud this evening to vote for the Violence Against Women's Act, which includes 2 of my amendments to focus on domestic violence in rural areas. So we've been busy. I really wanted to focus on the work we've been doing of late. We have still a lot more work ahead of us, but to be able to be a part of this sweeping package that is for the people who need it, for the people who have been waiting to see us step up here in Washington and get something done. Proud to be able to deliver in that regard and do all I can to continue to represent all of your interests here in Washington. And thank you, Mayor, for the invitation. Appreciate your leadership and all of your work that you've been doing. And I wish you all nothing but the best. Please stay safe and stay healthy, and God bless you.
Thank you, Congressman, and thank you for your work across our district. Now, I'd like to turn the mic over to someone else who doesn't need an introduction. I've had the pleasure of working with her, getting this truck study off the ground. She's worked with some of our councilmen on crosswalk signals and a slew of other initiatives in our city. So I'd like to turn it over now to Assemblymember Dede Baird.
Thank you so much, Kamal. Thanks for inviting me to be part of the State of the Community event. And I thank all of you in the community who have joined us today. I especially want to express my gratitude to Senator Gillibrand and to Congressman Delgado, as well as to our senior senator in the great state of New York and the Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer for their incredible work, their hard work, and their support and their votes for the American Rescue Plan. I know there's an ad going on I saw on TV saying, thank Congressman Delgado for his vote for the American Rescue Plan. And I am thanking you for that vote. This critical relief package will be a lifeline for so many New Yorkers in our community and across the whole state whose lives have been turned upside down by COVID-19, which includes the lives that have been lost and the physical toll of the pandemic, the profound financial impact the pandemic has had on our economy, on the local and state level, and on individual New Yorkers' financial stability, and the still to be understood mental, emotional, and behavioral health implications on our children and families. That's a story that remains to be told. This past Monday, the Assembly passed, with my support, our One House budget proposal, a robust plan that builds on this significant infusion of funds from our partners in the federal government. As you all know, the pandemic exposed deep deficiencies in our safety net, our childcare structure, our healthcare system, and our food security, and more. In the Assembly, we believe that smart budget planning to address these issues in a consistent way, year after year, and that's what our One House budget proposal is trying to do by driving record funding to education, including support for our upstate public and private colleges, by offering robust rent and mortgage relief, by bolstering funding for mental health initiatives and helping small businesses and arts organizations rebound, and by investments in agriculture, food systems, and ag education, among others, issues that are so important in Columbia County and in the greater Hudson community. Some specifics from our Assembly One House budget proposal include $1 billion for the new Small Business Reopening and Relief Grant Program to help small businesses, 1.8 billion in childcare funding, including expanding access to families earning up to 85% of the state median income. We saw childcare as a huge crisis during this pandemic, when even kids who were in school needed to have find childcare because their parents were either working at home or working elsewhere, and that time when they were in school was not time that parents could be relieved from worrying about where they were. We also included 3.125 billion in rent relief for both tenants and landlords. It's really important to me and to many of our other upstate members to be sure that those landlords who carried the rent for so many months and months and months were also made whole when they were acting they were good actors, and they were acting in the responsible way as well. We put in 2.1 billion to create a fund for excluded workers who don't have access to unemployment, federal stimulus funds, or other assistance programs. The proposed budget also increases school foundation aid by $1.4 billion. And it includes 100 million in a new arts recovery and revitalization program to assist with reopening efforts and the conversion of new outdoor venue spaces. We know here so well in Hudson and in the Columbia County in general how arts are economic drivers and how tourism is such an important part of our economy. And in fact, we benefited in lots of ways. We were close enough for people who wanted to take a day trip to get out of town to come to Hudson and to support our local businesses when they could. The budget also includes $10 million for municipal parks, which may be something the city of Hudson could look at, and 25 million for the I Love New York Restaurants Grant Program, an initiative that partners with local restaurants to feed those in need. And it's based on that World Kitchen model. As many of you know, I have been serving for the last 2.5 years as chair of the Assembly Committee on Veterans Affairs, which has just been my greatest honor. And I'm very proud of the work that we've done in that short time, including the passage of Restoration of Honor, which ensured that those who separate the service with other than an honorable discharge because of military sexual trauma, PTSD, traumatic brain injury, or for being gay under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, that they can now receive their state veteran benefits. And our outdoor RX legislation, which the governor had signed last year on Veterans Day, has already resulted in regular convening of state agencies to get more veterans and their families outdoor, to reduce the barriers to outdoors, to access the healing and the therapeutic benefits of our glorious parks and waterways and other natural resources across the state of New York. I remain committed to increasing awareness and support for mental and behavioral health services for our veterans in an effort to once and forever get rid of the stigmas too often associated with these very widespread health issues. Last year, I successfully fought for an expansion of the vital and the highly effective PFC Joseph P. Dwyer Peer-to-Peer Services Program, which focuses on suicide prevention, but really brings a whole range of mental and emotional health issues to the table in a forum that's comfortable for our veterans. And these are veterans from the Vietnam era through the present. The funds that had been held up earlier this year were released with our advocacy from the budget office within the last couple months. And this year in the Assembly budget, we increased the ask to 6 million. Last year it was 4.5 million, but we really want to expand this program. There's only 25 counties at this point that are receiving Dwyer funding. And this is a program that works so well and that is so effective that we want to be sure that veterans across the state have access to it. Yesterday, we passed a bill in the Assembly to support the expansion of veterans treatment courts, another tool to ensure that our returning veterans have a supportive and rehabilitative place to have hearings when they're returning and they're dealing with criminal justice issues. In our office, infrastructure continues to be a priority, particularly broadband and transportation. Broadband is essential to functioning in the 21st century, as all of our previous speakers have mentioned, whether it's schooling, running a business, or telemedicine. And we saw this more acutely than ever during the shutdown. In my district, the needs include infrastructure as well as cost and access. It's all of that. Earlier this year, we wrote to the governor's office to urge the state to re-engage on broadband, since the funding in Broadband for All has long been spent, and we know that the mission was not accomplished. I've been working with local town and county leaders and broadband committees, as well as my colleagues in the Assembly, to explore ways to expand access, particularly to our and underserved and last mile residents. To this end, our Assembly One House budget includes a new proposal to address the statewide digital equity gap by appropriating $15 million to a new digital inclusion grant program that would award grants to local governments, not-for-profit schools, libraries, and other community-based organizations to assist with internet access devices, digital literacy, education, and tech support, as well as efforts to address the flawed FCC mapping system that disguises the coverage gaps and makes it look like we're 98% covered when we certainly aren't. Like broadband, transportation is another issue that I've been talking with folks about since I was first elected, exploring options for better, greener, and more inclusive public transit in the county. And most recently, we've teamed up with the Spark of Hudson and the Greater Hudson Promise neighborhood to expand outreach of their transportation study, which aims to gauge attitudes about the current public transportation system in Columbia County and measure the need and interest in testing out technology that enables on-demand public transportation through an app, which of course also depends on adequate broadband. The goal of this technology is to increase transit access geographically and improve the efficiency and quality of service. And I encourage everyone who hasn't yet to please fill out the survey in Hudson and outside of Hudson. I'm particularly excited about the potential for this technology throughout the county, and that was partly why I wanted to be sure that the towns that I represent throughout the county are having their voices heard on this survey. And even access, even across New York State, especially in some of our rural communities. So after a meeting with Sparks Technology Partners via transportation, I helped secure funds in the Assembly budget proposal for a $10 million pilot program to test on-demand transportation services in small urban and rural communities as a way to improve access to public transportation in transit deserts, which Columbia County could pretty much be described as. Hudson, as many of you may know, is the only city amongst the 20 municipalities in my beautiful 106 Assembly District, and I am pleased to support the city, its amazing residents, restaurants, small businesses, arts organizations, and not-for-profits, and of course, the Hudson Blue Hawks in any way we can. Some of that support is actually through state grants, and that has recently included, as the mayor mentioned, $100,000 in funding for solar-powered crosswalks in the city of Hudson. And to date, crosswalks have been installed at the elementary school crossing, at the post office on Union Street, at 325 Columbia Street, and a total of 8 crosswalks in the city will have these solar-powered ADA compliant signs. In addition, we've been able to secure more than $200,000 for the Hudson City Fire Department to purchase new portable radios, a generator, and a new body for their truck. We secured $100,000, as the mayor mentioned, also for the ongoing origin and destination study of truck traffic in Hudson, to allow the city and the DOT to identify patterns and create a plan that benefits Hudson residents and the surrounding communities. The study's been conducted, and the city is currently compiling the findings of the study and is looking at potential alternative routes. We continue to work on long-time issues like Lyme and tick-borne disease and regenerative agriculture, and the crisis in the continuum of care, caregiving in our legislature, in our legislation, and in the work that we're doing in the legislature. I look forward to continuing to work with my colleagues at the federal, state, and local levels as we work to heal, reopen, and build back better. Better for our economy and local businesses, better and more equitably for all the diverse people of our communities, and better for the planet and a sustainable future. Thank you, Mayor. Thanks all of you for being here, and thanks for including me.
Thank you, Assemblymember Barrett. Happy to have you a part of this event and doing work, across our district for as long as you have. Um, our next speaker, I always wanted to make sure that we include the school district because for years it's always seemed like the city and the school district has been two separate entities. So any event that I do, I always love to hear from the school district. And, so I turn it over now to our superintendent, Maria Sepmeyer.
So good evening, and thank you so much, Mayor Johnson, for inviting me to this event. I am privileged to be amongst such distinguished guests here tonight. I want to thank Senator Gillibrand and Senator Jordan, Congressman Delgado, and Assemblyman Barrett, not only as our political representatives, but as our friends. I know that I just watched Congressman Delgado speaking to our elementary students, reading a book to them, actually taking time out of his busy schedule. I know that our Assemblywoman Barrett is doing the same for us, and we really enjoy that and see that connection so that our students can see leaders reading to them and engaging with them. So thank you so much for investing in our students and taking the time to be with them whenever you can. I would like to talk a little bit about my reflection today. A year ago today, we dismissed our pre-K through grade 12 students, not knowing when we were going to be able to open our doors and welcome them back in to finish out their school year. It was traumatic for them, it was traumatic for us. And every 2 weeks, we were listening and wondering what we were going to do to keep teaching and learning sustained throughout the school year and to take care of our senior students who missed so much in their senior year, as well as make sure that we were keeping everyone learning across the entire K through 12 system. And we came together as a community. I can tell you the school district could not have done it by ourselves. We are the only small city school district in this Twin County area. We have a high diversity and we have the same challenges that our large city school districts have on a concentrated level with about 1,600 students that we needed to provide for. But I sit here tonight saying that this March is much better than last March was. There was so much uncertainty, so much that we didn't know. All we knew was that we needed to pause in-person instruction for the foreseeable future and figure it out without much guidance. We knew we needed to provide food for our students. And when we dismissed them a year ago today, we sent them out the door with food for the rest of the week until we could get more food together and deliver that out inside of our community. And we continued to do that throughout the school year. Ultimately, we were closed and never did come back to school. And then planned for the summer to keep the food going for our students, as well as reopening schools and planning what that might look like with social distancing and masks. So I just want to thank my community for standing behind us. I can't tell you how many phone calls we received saying, what can we do? What do you need? There were organizations handing out cell phones to make sure our students had Wi-Fi service, asking if we needed devices, and we were able to have one-to-one devices sent out through our community with the help of community partners. So I just want to say thank you so much to the Hudson community for helping our students who live in the rural areas as well as in the cities. Our custodial staff for, rising to the occasion of all of the sanitation that needed to happen to be able to safely open up our schools. And, I often say that out of something that is so negative, something positive can rise up. And I can tell you the people of Hudson have done that. We have banded together. We have forged relationships with our Department of Health that we never had that open door and meetings on a weekly basis to talk about the concerns that we have that are joint concerns. The partnerships that we have with our local businesses, partnerships with our families and school leaders across the region. We learned a great deal about ourselves, of how much we can accomplish when we band together and how strong we truly are as a team. We've learned how to plan outdoor graduations that we've never done before, and end of the year events in very creative ways that we never had to plan for before, because we took for granted that each school year had these traditional celebrations and we were able to do them because we had experience on how to do them. But we worked together and we figured out how we could honor our students and our families in new ways, and we were able to accomplish that. The safe reopening of our schools. We've remained open. A lot of people thought we would be closed by the end of October, and our doors are still open. Students are coming. We do have 100% remote students. We do have a hybrid model due to the social distancing and not being able to have the capacity of our students coming in and learning together under roof for the entire week. And we're hoping that that can change. That would be a big game changer for our school district as well as school districts across the state. 6 feet is not sustainable. So we're hoping with the data that we've been hearing about that we'll be able to come back to school in the fall with less social distancing needed and still being able to remain safe. I want to say that, you know, I've had my staff, my administrators, our teachers Am I back? Am I back on?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know where it left off, but I'll just keep talking. You know, I can do that. So, you know, I just want to say that we were able to expand our communications, learn how to contact trace and keep our families safe and work through all of those challenges with them. So along with all of the challenges that we faced over the school year, we've also seen many champions come out and help us and help us to figure out how to keep teaching and learning, how to provide childcare for essential workers, something we've never had to do before within our school walls. So everyone from administrators, teachers, non-instructional staff, our custodial staff, clerical staff, aides, food service, we've all come together and we've done new work. They've always done great work in our schools, but this is all new work that we've had to relearn together. And I would say that we've remained flexible, adaptable. You know, we've had to exercise patience when we weren't getting the information, the data. There was a lot of emotions involved, but each day we always found someone in our path to help us figure it out, whether it was our colleagues or representatives like yourselves. And we are so appreciative of this rescue funding. We didn't know how we were going to be able to sustain ourselves with our school budgets. We are still putting it together with so much uncertainty of what the fall will look like, but we know that we have come so far and we have figured out so much and we've been successful that we'll be able to do it again come September. So thank you again for including me in this. Thank you for all of your advocacy. I see, Senator Jordan, that you have recruited yourself as a reader for our students, and you will be getting an invitation, I am sure. And we would love for you to take your and be a part of our Blue Hawk family. As you can see, I'm very proud to lead this school district, which I have been doing for the last 9 years. And even through such challenging times, I have learned what it means to be a Blue Hawk Nation and to really come together as a team. So thank you for your support. Again, I mean what I say, that you're our friends, not just politicians that represent us. And we appreciate all the support that you've given us over the years.
Thank you, Superintendent Suttmeyer. You know, one of the things I wanted to highlight tonight was, you know, for us to, our constituents, to be able to put faces and names to the people at every level that kind of oversee a lot of the policy, the education, the executive, legislation, like everything that has to do with our city and county. One of the key priorities of my administration remains making our city more equitable for all, which means supporting our citizens that need it the most. The vaccination clinic organized by the county and Bill Hughes was a huge success, providing vaccinations for almost 100 citizens in the 2nd and 4th wards. We are pushing to get more of these pop-up clinics around other wards. Our universal basic income pilot is in its 6th month of implementation and is the first long-term UBI pilot in the nation. The city also received a $1 million grant from Enterprise in the Attorney General's office. This grant is with the HCDPA to prevent displacement and keep our residents in Hudson. One of the first programs is a new housing assistance fund with St. Catherine's. The fund is helping citizens who need back rent, securing affordable housing, security deposits, and first rent, among other resources. Please see the city website for more information on that initiative. The DRI projects are underway. This has been a long time coming since the grant was first secured by former Mayor Tiffany Martin. One of the most noticeable projects is Promenade Park on Front Street. Access to this park for those who have trouble with steps and strollers and wheelchairs has been very limited for a number of years. This renovation will allow the park to be accessible for all. Unfortunately, the original designs for the bid came back over budget, so that will put us back about 3 weeks, and we'll be scaling down the project a little bit and then rebidding for construction. But in the end, we will have a park that is accessible to everyone and one that we can be proud of as a community. Shared streets has become a topic as we see the warmer weather on the horizon. We'll be meeting tomorrow to finalize how implementation could look in this year's version. We should have an announcement very soon after. But one thing I will note is that we will not be closing down Warren Street for traffic under any version of shared streets. Another high ticket item that's always talked about in Hudson is Ferry Street Bridge. I was disappointed, as many of you, to hear that the construction for the bridge was pushed back until next year. The good news is that there is funding and that progress is happening, and we will continue the course until the bridge is finished and we can have main access to our waterfront. Our senior center has been hard at work for our most vulnerable population. A fresh brand of services and resources can be found at their new website at hudsonNYSeniorCenter.com. Our youth workers, as many of you have read in the paper and have seen, are fighting for a chance to be unionized. I wholeheartedly support their effort to unionize. The issues between the current union that represents many of city employees predate me as mayor, so I cannot speak to why our youth workers have not been included. But we will see them get representation. We just have to make sure that it's done in a legal manner and through the right steps. But we definitely stand with our youth department. One key that I've learned through this government process is patience. I have a lot more grays in my beard than I did last year when I first took office. And I knew that we would have to have patience when we were tackling police reform. I knew that it would take having difficult, manageable conversations. I will say I'm very proud of our Police Advisory and Reconciliation Committee producing a well-crafted police reform package. But this is also something that we will continue to work on alongside officers, the committee, and the community. We'll also be sending out a survey for new members to join Park in the community in the next coming days. This is not something that can be done in just a year, but I'm happy for the progress that we had. Breaking the culture of mistrust and systematic racism is not something that you can dismantle right away, but I believe in our officers and I believe in our community. As we look to the future, our city and the council, the Common Council, continues to craft sidewalk legislation and will continue to find ways to improve our infrastructure. My administration believes in using science to respond to avoid crisis. This is true for climate change and environmental crisis as well. The city has completed energy-saving lighting improvements at 701 Union Street. We have embarked on an energy saving partnership with Hudson Housing Authority, working on a project to purchase new Energy Star refrigerators for those at Bliss Towers. We also secured a $20,000 grant from the DEC, which will fund the creation of a tree inventory and tree management plan executed by professional foresters. The fund balance in the city budget has always been a topic of last year since dealing with the COVID crisis. As our congressman stated, we will be receiving $670,000 in federal aid. We also will have an additional $218,000 from a separate aid package. So all the fears and the worries about our fund balance and the hit that we took last year, we can finally start to put those to rest as we rebuild for 2021. Also, in speaking of rebuilding for 2021, I want to applaud those who were organizing and creating all of these community groups. I just watched a presentation last night on 7th Street Park and the work that our citizens would like to see there. All the work that's the continuous fight for affordable housing in our city, as well as our waterfront issues and the need for access for all on our waterfront. No administration can do it alone, and that's why we use the phrase all hands on deck. I hope tonight has been informative for everyone. I hope that you reach out to all of our leaders who spoke tonight. If you have any type of issues, I know they are all one call away. And I want to thank everyone, all of our viewers who've viewed this on social media and on YouTube, and all of our speakers. So until next time, if you have any questions or any concerns, please feel free to reach out to my office as well. And